Good morning. It is Friday, January 19th. I'm Alan Saunders filling in for Matt Geica. This is Geike's Got Game on the River's Edge at riversedgepgh.com. It's a cold and blustery Friday morning, and I've got some hot takes maybe to warm us up a little bit. I don't know if they're actually hot takes, but I've got some things that I kind of want to get off my chest about covering sports and the interactions between the players and the coaches and the fans and media and where we fall in between. And this is sparked by something that Pirates broadcaster Greg Brown put on Twitter last night. Greg is a passionate guy. I think anyone that's ever listened to a Pirates broadcast that he's done has noticed that. He gets fired up. He loves the team. He's very, very passionate. And Greg is about the last person in the world that would go to social media, as he did last night, and say something that he didn't truly believe. And so here's what Greg tweeted last night. There's some fake news out there. I happen to know Bob Nutting. He is as good a man as I have ever met. He is an excellent team owner who righted a sinking Pirates ship. He cares deeply about the organization and wants to bring a championship to Pittsburgh. That is the truth. Now, Greg got mostly flamed on Twitter for that, and I think expectedly so, because the public perception of Bob Nutting as the Pirates owner doesn't really match my limited experience with the man, and certainly Greg has had far more than I have. And so I believe Greg. He would not say something he didn't believe. He's not that kind of person. He has a passion for the team. And so I think if he really thought that Bob Nutting was a bad guy who was a terrible owner that was leading the Pirates astray, he's not going to say that, but I don't think you'd hear him say anything. I think he'd just keep to himself his own opinion. But two things. Well, one is that it really rings true to me in what I've said about Pitt head basketball coach Kevin Stallings, and that Kevin is a really, really, really genuinely good man. I know this because I've worked with him for a while now, and I've worked with a lot of basketball coaches. And especially when you consider the rest of his profession, he is an extremely down-to-earth, real human being, a good person. I've gotten to know his son, Jacob, who plays for the Pirates. Also a good kid, really down to earth, not entitled at all. And you're talking about someone that's the son of a basketball coach who's also a professional athlete. If anybody in the entire world should have been raised to be entitled, it would have been him. And the fact that he wasn't at all really, to me, says enough about Kevin, that he's a good person. And I think it's interesting because fans want to believe, for the most part, that their team is good. And by good, I don't mean wins and losses good. That's easy to determine. What I mean is good is that they want to believe that in the movie that is made about their team, in every fan's mind, their team is the good guys. That they're never the bad guys in the Disney movie about their team. And that's okay. And it leads but it leads to strange places sometimes, and here's one of them. Because when the team doesn't do well, there's anger. And I think a lot of the anger gets put on people personally when it really shouldn't. You know, Bob Nutting is an extremely private person. I think the number of people that could speak honestly, as Greg did, about his true character are relatively small. So then we shouldn't be saying anything about his true character, right? I mean, if you want to criticize his business acumen or the way he runs the Pirates, I think that's fine. But to say he's a bad guy that doesn't care, and I couldn't say that with any accuracy, and I don't see how anybody else could either. And I say the same thing about Kevin Stallings a lot. People say, oh, he's a jerk, or, he's not. He's a good guy. And I think the real thing is that people don't actually care, right? Nobody cares if Bob Nutting is a good guy or a bad guy. They just want the Pirates to win. And they want to be able to believe that he's a good guy while they're doing it. But they don't care if he actually is. The same thing happens all across sports. When the team is winning, the players are good people, good guys. They try hard. They love the game. They represent us as a city. And when the team sucks, they're bad apples. They do the wrong things. They're in trouble, and those things are just overlooked when the team wins. And so, I hate to say this because there are a lot of good people in sports, but it doesn't really matter. People in sports are paid a lot of money. Probably more money than they deserve given their contribution to society. And they're paid that money to win. And if they don't win, they get fired. And it doesn't really matter if they were a good person or not. And that is hard to deal with as a person that interacts with these people every day. When I go into the clubhouse or when I talk to a player or I talk to a coach, I know, I can tell which ones are good people and which ones are not. I mean, sometimes I'm blindsided like everyone else by something, but it hurts to know that it doesn't matter in this business that we're in if pitcher number 7 is a really, really good guy and he does everything the right way, and he's a good person, and he gives back, and he's a good dad and a good husband and someone that I would want my kid to look up to. If he's got a 6.50 ERA, none of that matters. And on the other hand, if pitcher number 6 has a 1.95 ERA, it doesn't matter if he's spent most of his life in and out of jail and abuses women and whatever. Character doesn't really matter. But it's this myth that it goes along with winning, and it doesn't. There's plenty of good people on bad teams. There are plenty of good people that just lose. There are plenty of good people who lead losing teams, and there are plenty of bad people that win championships. And as we've seen time and time again, some of sports' best players have turned out to be jerks, on many and criminals. And so I feel like we take things, and social media makes this worse because everyone has an opinion and they feel the need to broadcast it. But I think the personal thing really bothers me because I do know these people personally. And whether Bob Nutting is a good baseball owner or a bad baseball owner has nothing to do with whether he's a good guy or a bad guy, and whether he cares or he doesn't care. Think about your experience. I'm sure there are plenty of people in your workplace right now that care about their job, that are good people, and are still lousy at it, and that still frustrates you. That's the way it works. And so I just think we need to step back as a sports culture from where we are with the way we talk about these individuals like they aren't. And I understand they're highly compensated people. I understand that they are put on a pedestal for a reason. But if we want to pretend like we're rooting for good people, then we should recognize that there are good people out there that are even when they lose. And so, like I said, I don't know Bob Nutting very well, but what Greg said to me really it really hit a chord with me because I know Greg, and I know that Greg means that deeply, and he wouldn't have said it if he didn't. And you can find Greg's tweet. He's on Twitter at @GBrowniePoints, and go read some of the responses. It's not pretty. It's not a good look. That bothers me. It bothers me when I post a quote from Kevin Stallings postgame, and it's just people flaming his character. And if you want to say, look, man, Pirates, They haven't won anything in 40 years, and Pitt basketball is probably going to not win a conference game, and I'm not okay with that as a fan. That's fine. And you can disagree with, I really don't think the Pirates should have traded Andrew McCutcheon. I really think that, Marcus Carr is better suited to be a shooting guard. Whatever. Have your take on sports. But I guess my point is there are people that are involved with these people, and that's media like me and broadcasters like Greg, and there are other people that are associated with these teams that have public availability that broadcast their thoughts and feelings. If we're telling you that a person that we interact with on a daily basis is a good person, believe us, because we wouldn't say it if it wasn't true. We're not going to say the opposite. I can't do my job in the Pirates clubhouse if on Twitter that morning I say first baseman number 2 is a jerk. I can't do my job anymore if I say that. So I'm not going to. But I can say, hey, man, outfielder number 45, he is a really, really solid, down-to-earth guy, and he's good in the clubhouse. Everybody loves him. Yeah. If you hear us saying those things, it's probably true. Believe us. Nobody's out there trying to get, as I make a bad pun, brownie points, since that's Greg's Twitter handle. No one's out there trying to get brownie points on social media. If I like somebody, and I'm going to tell you straight out, I think I tweeted Jared Hughes signed a free agent contract with the Cincinnati Reds this year. And I tweeted, man, good that Jared's still in the division, because that means I'll get to see him a few times a year. And Jared is a fantastic guy. One of the nicest people I've ever met in baseball. Totally down to earth. Just awesome guy. So yeah, I said that. Now, listen, if there's another person that I dealt with that that happened to and I didn't say anything, maybe I don't like that guy, or maybe it just doesn't rise to that level. I'm not going to tell you that. But when some people connected to the team say, this is a good person, this is a nice guy, this is someone I've really enjoyed interacting with, believe them, because they're not out there full of crap. They're saying it because they believe it. They don't have to say it. Nobody's making them. It's not part of anyone's job. It's just something that we do when we see people who we think are of good character being denigrated on social media. And so I think it's great that Greg stood up and took some heat for something that he believes in, something that he saw that he thought was inaccurate. And I do the same thing I do the same thing all the time with Kevin Stallings. He is a great guy. If you don't go watch the video, you can find it on Pitt's social media. He played guitar for kids at Children's Hospital a few months ago, and I heard the story about this, that Pitt has a new initiative under athletic director Heather Lyke that they're going to be doing more things as teams to give back to charities, and they kind of had to talk Kevin into doing this. And it's not that he wasn't willing. I think it was more about that he wasn't totally comfortable playing guitar in public. But he loved it. Look, go find that. I'll retweet that video here as soon as I can find it. You can tell he is loving every minute of that. And that's just a good guy. And so, yeah, if you don't like him as basketball coach, you don't think he was the right hire for Pitt, you don't like the way he was hired, whatever. Don't trash the guy. Same thing. If you think the Pirates should be spending $115 million instead of $100 million, or you're mad that they raised the season ticket prices or whatever, then say you think Bob Nutting is a bad baseball owner. Don't say he's a bad guy that doesn't care, because you don't know. And that's my hot take to try to warm things up here on a chilly Friday morning. We've got a bit of an abbreviated show today, so time for a break. Can we take a break now? And then we'll come back, and I'm going to talk about managing expectations and how I think that's one of the hardest jobs for a coach in 2018. We'll be back in just a minute after we take a break. This is Geiks Got Game. I'm Alan Saunders on the River's Edge.
Hey, this is singer-songwriter Tim Vitullo, broadcasting from Mr. Small's Theater. You're listening to the River's Edge Radio Network.
Welcome back to Geiks Got Game. I'm Alan Saunders, guest hosting for Matt Geika on the River's Edge. We're back in studio here at Mr. Small's in the Millvale neighborhood of Pittsburgh. Brian Crawford, my producer extraordinaire.
Greetings.
Thank you for setting things up for us today. And first period I talked about good people in sports and how it doesn't really matter, but it bothers me. It bothers other people when we see people that we know to be good dragged through the mud on social media. Brian, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you make a good point. Unfortunately, a lot of losers really do well in the world. Yeah. And unfortunately, there are a lot of really good people that just don't. Bob Nutting, I have mixed feelings on him just because my friend is in the media and he purchased that newspaper entity and immediately cut my friend's paper and lost all these people lost their jobs, including people who had been working for this paper for decades. So I kind of have mixed feelings on him from my personal scale, but I don't know the guy either, so I don't know what all went on behind the scenes there.
Yeah, I mean,
in that situation either. So
that's kind of, again, it's the same thing. I know several people. Bob Nutting recently purchased the newspaper in Uniontown.
That's the one I'm referring to. Yeah.
And I know some people that write there. I know some people that wrote there. And I don't know the details. Maybe the paper was going to close and everyone was going to lose their jobs if Bob doesn't come in and buy it. And then he saved 50% of the people anyway.
Yeah.
So, you can't know. And I've heard some people say that he's not an easy boss to work for, but that again, that doesn't make you a bad person. That makes you a demanding businessman who has, fiduciary goals. And I don't know. I just think that we should. There's plenty out there if you want to be critical about Bob Nutting as a Pirates owner. Well, look at that. You don't need to delve into the personal to make a point. I guess is where I'm at.
Yeah, I agree. And you don't know what he does, with philanthropy outside of...
I'll tell you what, and you want to watch another video, the Pirates sent 2 planes worth of supplies to Puerto Rico after the hurricanes there, and Bob went... he was down there by himself with shirt sleeves on and digging in and moving boxes, and you could tell that he was energized by that. Like he enjoyed it. And so I don't think he's. I don't know him, but I certainly I've met him a few times. I don't know him enough to judge character.
Sure,
but he doesn't seem like a bad guy to me. Does he seem like a bad baseball owner? Well, I think that's certainly up for debate anyway.
I'm laughing not because of Bob Nutting going down to Puerto Rico. I'm laughing because the PWSA sent clean water to Puerto Rico, yet they couldn't deliver it to the people here in Pittsburgh.
This is a frequent talking point, Brian, if you don't know this. So the next thing I want to talk about, since we've got hot takes for a cold morning, is managing expectations. I think that of everything that a coach is responsible for in 2018, managing expectations might be the most difficult thing because it's not, for 2 reasons. One, it's really, really, really important to them keeping their job for a long time. And 2, it's not something any of them are trained to do. And so it becomes very difficult for a lot of these guys to say the right things and do the right things in order to manage the expectations of their fans. And it really is a thing. And I'm inspired by this, by the vitriol about the Steelers' loss to Jacksonville in the playoffs and the number of people that are calling for the head of Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin, and also a trip to Duquesne I made earlier this week where I was talking with Duke's head coach Keith Dambrot. If you look at where they came into their current season, the expectations for those 2 men could not possibly have been more different. I think the average Steeler fan expected them to get to the AFC Championship game and do better than they did last year against the New England Patriots. I think that was the expectation of an average Steeler fan, I would say. Maybe even higher. Maybe even get to the Super Bowl. But I'd say at least get back to the AFC Championship game and do better than they did last year against the Patriots. That'd be a minimum expectation. In order to do that, that means that the Steelers would have to be one of the 4 best teams in pro football and maybe even one of the two best teams in pro football, probably. Because I think the NFC is not. It's kind of. I expect if the Patriots beat the Jaguars, I expect the Patriots to roll over whoever wins in the NFC.
It's like I said the other day, Mr. Brady's running out of fingers for all of his rings.
That's right, he is. He'll put one. He's very stylish. He'll put one on a chain, or maybe he'll do something. I don't know. Maybe he'll do something else. Earrings. I could see
there
earrings.
We go. Yeah, I can see
mean
that.
those. Yeah, whatever. He'll find a way to get them on his body. I don't think Tom will have an issue with that. And so the expectation of the average Duquesne fan was probably, we hope we don't come in last place in the Atlantic 10. I think that was pretty. If the Dukes came in 10th in the Atlantic 10, and there are more than 10 teams now, so if they came in 10th in the Atlantic 10, I think most people would say, all right, this guy's not too bad. Those expectations are what causes an uproar in the fan base when they're not met, and those expectations are why coaches get fired. Owners never want to fire coaches. General managers never want to fire coaches. First of all, they picked that coach because they liked him. So they had a reason to want to keep him. They already went out and decided, for the most part. I mean, sometimes you have a situation where the coach is a holdover from a previous regime or something like that. But for the most part, if an owner or a general manager picked a coach and hired him, they like him enough that they want to keep him pretty much all the time. And owners and general managers hate hiring coaches because if you get it wrong, that's how they get fired. A general manager. It's really, really hard for a general manager to get fired. They either have to lose for a number of years over an extended period of time, or they just have to hire the wrong coach, and that'll do it real fast. So nobody wants to fire the coach. They fire the coach when they have to, when the fans get to a point that says this is not working anymore, and they got to go. They got to go. And so I think managing the expectations has become extremely important for the coach because now more than ever, you don't see the owners out there on TV every week. You don't hear from the general manager on a daily basis. The coach is the public face of the team. And he does more than anything to set those expectations. And I'm saying he, but this works for, obviously, coaches of both genders. To set expectations for that organization. And the expectations are that the Steelers should win the Super Bowl. And if they don't get close to winning the Super Bowl, that's a bad year. And people are mad. They want Mike Tomlin to be fired. And the Steelers haven't been to the Super Bowl in going on 8 years now. They haven't won the Super Bowl in going on 10 years now. And, according to the standards set by previous coaches in that spot and the ownership, that's not good enough. But I think that the Rooneys have done probably the best job of any sports team in establishing a culture in which the expectations can be as high as they are anywhere. I mean, maybe outside of the New York Yankees, I don't think there's another fan base that has higher standards for what is a successful season than the Pittsburgh Steelers. I really don't think there is. A successful season is winning the Super Bowl. A moderately successful season is getting really close to winning the Super Bowl. And anything other than that is a disaster. And that's okay because that's the standard that they've set. But what Mike Tomlin has to do on a daily basis is very difficult when it comes to acknowledging that is a very difficult standard to meet. And even if the general manager does their job mostly well, and he does his job mostly well, and his coordinators and assistant coaches do their job mostly well, and his players do their job mostly well, that's a goal that's not going to be met all the time. Even if everybody does everything mostly pretty well, I mean, to win a championship requires an inordinate amount of luck. It requires timing, things that are completely out of anyone's control, in addition to things that are inside people's control going really exactly right. I mean, if you look at the Steelers' recent championships, there's a good amount of luck involved there, right? I mean, let's look at the Steelers winning the Super Bowl over Arizona. That involved Santonio Holmes making a catch that most of the human world thought was physically impossible. It involved James Harrison returning an interception for 100 yards through like 19 tacklers with no time left on the clock whatsoever. So if at any point he stepped out of bounds by a half an inch or his knee scraped the ground, that play doesn't happen. The Steelers' Super Bowl win against Seattle was aided by several penalties that the Seattle fans are still bitter about, and certainly I think even most Steeler fans can acknowledge could have gone either way. And then the Steelers don't even get to the Super Bowl if Ben Roethlisberger doesn't make a shoestring tackle of a defensive back who was stabbed by his significant other that week. Look, luck is a huge part of sports, and you just can't get there if you're not lucky. Injuries, I mean, you think about, I said this on Twitter as it happened, you think about the Steelers season and the loss of Ryan Shazier, heartbreaking on a personal level, but devastating on an X's and O's level. I mean, that's a guy that you can't replace, not just in the middle of the season, really ever. And I think, people are saying, oh, yeah, the Steelers defense, oh, they fired the offensive coordinator, but the defense is really the problem. Yeah, well, look what happened to the defense. And so Keith Dambrot said something on Tuesday that really drove this point home to me. He said that coaches are competitors, and that most coaches are former players, and the coaches, they're never satisfied with a result, right? Keith Dambrot's Dukes started at Atlantic 10 play 4-1. I think they lost to St. Louis since then, so they're 4-2 right now. That's way, way, way above expectations. Way above expectations. Expectations 2-4 would have been above expectations. Just being competitive in all 6 games would have been above expectations. Where they're at is way above expectations. And he's not satisfied with it. He said, you can't be okay with coming in the middle of the pack. Otherwise, you'll never win. You have to be unsatisfied until you get to the top of the mountain. Otherwise, you will never, ever get there. And I think that is absolutely the mindset that every coach has. But I question if it's wise to say it publicly, because that's how you end up getting fired for being in the middle of the pack. And I appreciate his honesty and his sentiment. Because I think he's right. I don't think any competitor has ever been satisfied with 4th place or losing in the first round of the postseason or just getting close to winning. Nobody's okay with that. But I think the ability of a coach to go out there publicly, acknowledge the challenges of his situation. I mean, Keith Dambrot's situation. Duquesne hasn't won anything in 40 years. They have no fans. They have very little financial support from the fan. I mean, that's a program that's down. And he's saying we can't be satisfied with 4-2. I think coaches that manage expectations well are going to do much better in the social media era than those that do not. And I'm interested to see where this goes with both of these situations. Obviously, I don't think the Steelers are going to fire Mike Tomlin. I think they would have already if they were going to. Nor do I think they should, because stability in of itself is very important. And I think fans often lose sight of that in their fervor for winning and losing, in that just staying the same is often the very best course in anything, not just in sports, because of how important stability is to a culture and to an organization. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult as a competitor to then go out there and say, well, look, we've got these things working against us. We didn't get very lucky, and we lost. And, that's why, and we'll try to do better next year, but it might not happen next year. But I do think that managing expectations is very difficult. I talked before on the show about what happened at the University of Tennessee in their coaching search. I think that was certainly an instance of expectations gone amok. And I think it's difficult. It's difficult to rein in an angry mob once it's been formed. You can't put that back. And I think that's something the Pirates are seeing right now. I mean, I don't know. I ran a poll the other day on Twitter. Do you trust Neil Huntington to rebuild the Pittsburgh Pirates? And I think it was about 80% said no. How do you fix that? That's tough. That's very tough. And so I do think that it's an underrated part of being a head coach right now is you want to get those fans behind your team. You want to get them fired up, but you have to keep their expectations within reason if you want to keep your job. We are just about out of time here on the River's Edge. A little bit of an abbreviated show today, but I want to thank Matt Geico for letting me take his seat. And maybe Matt will be back next week. He's flying home from San Jose right now. So shout out to Matt, and I don't know. We'll see if he's around. Otherwise, I might just take a show, something like that.
I just wasn't living up to expectations.
The standard is the standard.
Yeah, I was below the standard.
Standard is the standard. Obviously.
Yes. But I got a good sleep.
Until next week, we'll take a break. And this has been Alan Saunders on Geigs Got Game. You're listening to The River's Edge.